Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode number 74 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm your host, producer Jaime, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today, I'm going to be bringing you my next Podcasting 102 topic, using ChatGPT and AI ethically for streamlining and not plagiarism, with my professional podcasting peer, Marc of Ironic Media. This episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flintstone Media. Listen in and let's do this. First, by starting with one of my daily tips. Hey, it's producer Jaime, and I used to be a data analyst, by the way, for 15 years. So we're going to be talking about statistics every once in a while. I'm going to bring that to you. So today, let's start first, very simply, with what download stats are the most important for you to track. There are just a few most important for you to keep track of. Number one, what is your month-to-month number? What does your month-to-month growth look like over time? Number two, what is your average download number for an episode over 7 days? The first 7 days of release of life for that episode, what is the average download for that episode? You're going to track that for each and every single episode. Episode 1, what was it? Episode 2, what was it? Et cetera, et cetera. And you're also do the same thing for the 30-day number for the life of each episode. So again, your month-to-month number, your 7-day download number for episodes, and your 30-day download number for episodes. Come back every single day for an extra tip. Podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jaime. So be sure that you're subscribed to me on YouTube, Clapper, TikTok, Instagram, basically all the social medias, so you can get all of my daily tips and you get them first. Also, I want to make sure that you're aware of an opportunity to work in a small group setting live with me. So whether you're launching a show or want to level up your podcast, there's a workshop for you. Just go to toppodcastworkshop.com and you can find out more information. But today's episode, I'm so excited for it. Okay, super excited for it because I've been following this gentleman, Marc for a while, a good while, on Clubhouse and on TikTok. And so when I hear his Clubhouse rooms, I respect a lot of the information that he throws down in terms of podcasting advice. And so I follow him on TikTok, and he has been on the forefront of exploring ChatGPT and the use of AI. But the question that's been coming up for a lot of us as we've been exploring this is, how do we use it and still stay true to ourselves? How do we use it as a tool to enhance ourselves, but not lose ourselves in the process, and certainly not tread into unethical waters? How do we avoid things like plagiarism? How do we do this right? Well, Marc put together a TikTok video that blew my mind, and I'll be sharing it on today's episode during today's chat with the man himself, Marc. So let's get into my conversation with him about using ChatGPT and AI ethically for streamlining and not plagiarism. Oh my gosh, Marc, I'm so excited to be on the microphone. This isn't the first time we share the microphone. As I just mentioned, we met at PodFest. We got to share a stage, but this is the first time I've had you as a guest on my show. I am so excited. I've been a guest in your rooms on Clubhouse, so thank you so much for being here today. Marc, tell the people all about you, who you are.
Yeah, it is great to be here with you. I mean, I know from the earlier days of Clubhouse, we both used to frequent it a lot, yet our paths didn't really cross, right? Like we shared
Right.
maybe a stage here and there. It wasn't until this year that we've really connected on a more personal level. So I'm really happy to be here with you.
Thank you.
And as far as I go, I've been podcasting now I've just been trying to figure it out recently because I found out I made a mistake. I thought it had been almost 17 years. It might actually be now closer to 19 years. I found some old recordings, and I think it was around 2005 or so that I started. So I've been doing this for a while. I've been working with all sorts of podcasts in my career, from huge ones that get 20, 30,000 downloads every single day to the ones that are just starting out that maybe don't have any kind of network, any kind of following, and they're looking to utilize podcasting to help them do that. So I've been around the block. I've helped people. I've helped companies before. It wasn't until early 2020, before the pandemic, that I had started this business of mine, Ironic Media, where we produce podcasts, much like you do, and consult podcasters, much like you do. And we've been doing it now ever since then. And I think the pandemic actually was a good thing for my business. It really launching a new business, you never know. And then when you launch a new business, the very month that a pandemic happens, you really never know. And it ended up actually being a blessing. Yeah, it was a blessing for me because a lot of people were home looking for things to do. And podcasting, as you know, was a big one for a lot of people. So it really helped me in the business, and so pleased to do it. And now so many new things happening in the world of podcasting and around the world in general, right? With all this AI stuff, which I know we'll talk about.
So much stuff.
And I've dove into that full force and really enjoying that journey. And I know there are a lot of questions around it too. So looking forward to having a conversation with you about it.
Yes. You've been so fun to watch how much you've been diving into it, because it is kind of a shiny object moment, right? For some people, everyone's kind of like, oh, what is this thing? And a lot of people are using it in ways that are ruffling some feathers, aren't really, some of us are like, I don't know if that's right. So I've been really appreciating how you've been approaching it. So yes, that is what we're going to be diving into today for sure. And, oftentimes, when I tell people I've been in podcasting since 2014, eyes get wide, mouths drop. You've been in it since 2005. And I think that should, let's just take a moment to celebrate that for a second. So, and also the fact that a lot of people did get into podcasting during the pandemic. A lot of people also started production companies around the time of the pandemic, you right before, but you have so much experience leading into you starting your company. I just wanted to give you your flowers for what you're bringing to the table in terms of the depth of your portfolio and your experience and everything else. Like, I've gotten to know you, and you're fantastic. So I highly recommend Ironic Media. I mean, great name. Oh my gosh. It's so great. So, okay. But you'll still get a commercial at the end of the episode for my company too.
There's plenty to go around.
So let's lay the landscape for us, okay? Because I know there's a lot going on, and you have had your nose to the ground paying attention to all of it. So in terms of podcasting, what is the landscape right now for ChatGPT and AI?
I think it's really very similar to any other industry right now. It's in its exploratory phase, right? We're just learning, really, at least mainstream, we're learning what we can do with this technology and how we can use it to our advantage. So, it really isn't any different than anything else. Right now, I'm using it to really, in all the different steps of podcasting, from launch to growth to promotion, all the different things, I'm experimenting with it and finding ways that I can utilize it, take advantage of it, and show other podcasters how they can do that. And my big focus has been ChatGPT, and I'm playing around with a lot of other tools that are out there that are incorporating all of this AI stuff, even project management software, like Notion, for example, recently added AI into their technology, and it has made already a robust product even more robust. And the ideas that it can spit out, the things it can do for you, they're really endless right now. So yeah, I'm just exploring really and sharing what I learn with everybody else.
It is really an exciting time, because you're right. We're seeing the inroads of AI in so many different things, not only in how it's being used, but the tools that we've been using, how they're adopting it into their process, and making things available. Full disclosure, right now we're recording on Riverside, and Riverside recently added in transcription. So as soon as this recording is done, pretty much within a few minutes, I have a full transcript. That's AI. So this is, but with ChatGPT and everything, it takes things to the next level. And so what I really want to focus in on with you today is some of those concerns that people have, with podcasting. It's such a creative space. And when all of AI, this current AI conversation started happening, it started with the art, right? And seeing the extra fingers on the hands, and it just looked weird, right? And so now we're seeing it in various firms in audio. Like, now we have AI voices. And of course, with ChatGPT, there's ways to utilize it to pull information, for better or for worse, and incorporate it into what you're doing. So I think sometimes the concern is plagiarism, because in order to what ChatGPT is doing, you're asking it to do things for you in the likeness of X, right? And if X is another artist, then you're pulling from that artist's work. So sometimes when it comes to like the art, for example, we would see on this mashup of artwork, we would see like the relics of the original artist's signature in the the AI art. So that's kind of translating into podcasting. That's the concern. Are we going to start seeing signatures of other people's knowledge, of other people's talent being used to further your own podcasting career? And is that plagiarism? So plagiarism defined is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. And we got into, you and I were in an awesome room yesterday at Clubhouse, and I was on the floor. I almost said the floor. I was on the stage, totally different room. I was on the floor. I was on the stage with my buddies John and Johnny, and Johnny was, I mean, he had a legit soapbox about it, legit concerns. He's been podcasting almost as long as you, and he has legit concerns about the creative process. And I appreciate so much that you've had that same perspective. You've approached this with that same sense of ethics, morality, and integrity. So if I can just jump off the bat, play your video that made me stop in my tracks, the video that I still can't stop talking about, Marc. I have told people about this. I have literally pinned it to the link in Clubhouse rooms and stuff, put in the chat, whatever comes up, like, you need to see this video. And it's a couple of different things that your people are going to hear that are such golden nuggets that I cannot wait to share. So let's share this video. Here we go.
Put an end to ChatGPT plagiarism and teach it to write podcast show notes just like yours. There are definitely some ethical debates on using something like ChatGPT to help you with your show notes, episode development, etc. So I want to give you a way to use ChatGPT to create episode show notes in your style and your format. First thing you got to do is open up ChatGPT by going to openai.com. Your prompt should read, "Before you proceed writing show notes, I will provide you with transcripts from a podcast episode you will be writing about. Do you understand?" ChatGPT confirms. Now, my transcript is too long for ChatGPT. I'm going to get an error message if I copy paste the whole thing. So I do it in parts. You may have seen this from my ChatGPT hack part 1 that I posted a couple months ago. It still works, and here's how I do it. Remember the following transcript and remember it as part 1. Only answer okay when you're done. Here is part 1. I copy and paste the first 15 minutes and ChatGPT confirms again. Then I repeat this process 3 more times, and I'll show you what that looks like for part 2. Let's add a part 2 to part 1. Remember the following transcript and remember it as part 2. Only answer okay when you're done. Here is part 2. I copy and paste the next 15 minutes, and I repeat these steps for parts 3 and 4. Since I didn't like its first iteration of the show notes, I tried a more simple approach. Keep in mind, it still remembers those 4 parts of that transcript that I provided. So I prompted it again, and this time what I'm going to do is give it one example of a previous set of show notes done by the same client, and my prompt says, rewrite the show notes based off of the following example. And I gave it that one example of the previous episode show notes. You can see the show notes starts with a short paragraph. It highlights specific things that you'll learn during the episode. It gives a little conclusion and a little plug as well for the guest. And the example shows that there are timestamps so that the audience can skip around and find a certain part they're looking for. And just like that, ChatGPT writes new show notes based on that transcript I provided earlier, written exactly how the example did it. Now, there were a few things that we wanted to change about what it spit out, and we had some additional insight we wanted to add, so make sure to put your own touch on it. And if you need more help with this or anything related to your podcast, give me a follow.
Yes, please follow Marc all over the place because that was genius, a genius, and so many different things. So let's start with the first thing I want to point out. First of all, major kudos on that. I'll just call it your remember hack because I don't know what else to call it. But in order to feed it that a whole bunch of information, like that was one of the reasons I shared it in a Clubhouse room. People were talking about, I think, using it in filmmaking and they wanted their scripts in there, but they couldn't figure out how to get the whole script. They were like, I've got a video for you. And it was like, oh my God. So in order to, how did you even figure that out? Let's talk about like how you're learning ChatGPT and how did you figure out that hack for getting all that bunch of information in all at once?
You know, it's one of those things that I'm sure, Jaime, you've gone through before where you do something in your processes that you think is second nature, that you don't think much of, right? But what happens is you find out that other people had no idea and they are gravitating to it and wanting more of it, right? And that was what it was for me. Yes. You know, I was using ChatGPT specifically to play around with. Like I said, try to find ways to use it. And I was getting frustrated because the transcript is probably the most important thing to have if you're going to utilize AI to help you with your process. So I was just going back and forth, trial and error. And then I thought to myself, well, if the problem is it's too long, what if I just give it to it in parts and I'll tell it what I'm doing? And I tried it and it worked. And then I noticed I was telling somebody else about it in the community and they said, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Somebody else asked, oh, wow, I never thought of that. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to put out some content about this. And it was a very successful reel in that regard. We got thousands of people looking at it, saving it, and using it now. And eventually it's going to be outdated. Eventually it will be able to take in more data all in one swoop. But for right now, breaking something that's too long into parts and just communicating that with ChatGPT is all it really takes. So I think the big lesson that I learned from that really is to talk to it as if it's a person on the other end and be very specific and clear with what you're doing, and you're going to get much better results that way.
Kind of treat it like an assistant who's 10 years old. You need to get very specific instructions to.
Yeah, my business partner for Next Gen Podcaster, he says it's just like when we were in grade school and you get that project where describe exactly step by step how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich, right? And then the teacher will take the student's work and will attempt to do it in front of the class, and it never goes well. It never makes that complete peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it's the same thing with ChatGPT. It's just be very clear and specific, and you'll get the kind of answers that you're looking for. It's like a good interview, right? If you ask me a crappy question, Jimmy, you're going to probably get a crappy answer.
Right.
But you prepare, you think about your question, and you ask them, and you're going to hopefully get a good answer from me.
That's the goal, right? Well, listen, I love that because it goes to the next. It's a great segue to what I wanted to talk about, because it's garbage in, garbage out in a lot of different ways. I love the illustration of the peanut butter sandwich. Oh my gosh, that brought some memories back. That's so funny. Yeah. But you're right. If the instructions aren't quite right, it's like getting the booklet of instructions from IKEA. If something's missing, forget it. You can't put the whole thing together. So ChatGPT can't put it together right if you don't give it the right information. That's so smart. But also garbage in, garbage out, because part of the circling this back to plagiarism, part of the issue is that when you put in somebody else's work, you're getting somebody else's work out, at least as part of the result. So I love what you're doing is you're focusing on telling people, no, put in your own work, or in your case, your client's work. Put in your work so that it's using your work, your voice, as its data source. That way, it's not plagiarism. It really truly is just streamlining and assisting. So that was the second thing that I wanted to highlight, because it is such a smart way to approach this. So just dive into a little bit more about how this idea came about, and why you think it is important for podcasters to really keep on this side of it rather than dipping into using it in ways that might lend itself to plagiarism.
Well, for one, if we solely rely on AI to spit out the content for us, write all the scripts and notes and all that, what we're ending up doing is training AI on AI generated content. Eventually, it's going to be reading that content and then kind of vicious circle, right? We want it to learn more of our own styles. And so that's my approach is, first of all, for all the podcasters that have been doing it, even for any period of time, you already have content that you can actually train ChatGPT to learn and teach it to write in your voice. Another great example I have for you is, I love to put out content on social media.
Yeah, and I love to watch it, so keep it coming.
Yeah, okay, well, I will. And there are definitely times where I'm in that rut, right? Like most creators, there's a point where sometimes you're just either not feeling it, or you feel like you've run out of ideas or what have you. Yeah. And there are some series that I do on social media where, they're kind of like reoccurring series. And what I did was I fed it all the scripts from all the ones that I had previously done to learn not just my writing style, but also learning the format, how I do these particular videos. And then what I can do is after I've trained it, then I can tell it, I want to do a video on best practices for a guest. And I want you to do it in the style of that series that I've been running. And it takes into account the style, the delivery, the writing style, etc. And it spits out a script for me. Usually it's not perfect on the first round, but then it's given me something to work with. So now I don't have to sit there and stare at a blank piece of paper. It can get me some of the way there.
Right.
So I think when you have content, and even if you don't have content, go to things like your emails, go to things like projects that you've written for work or whatever it is. Find different things that you've written and feed it to it and tell it you want it to learn your writing style, your format, all the different things that you want it to take into account, and it will learn it. It's never going to, well, I can't say never, but as of now, it's never going to be perfect, but it's definitely going to get you a good way there. And that's where I want to end this part of the conversation, just to say that it's like any other tool for me that I use to help me improve my productivity. It's right. If the tool can get me 80% there, and I'm okay with doing that last 20% because it saved me 80% of the time to do it. And that 20%, I'm able to not just adjust it, but I'm able to make sure that it is in my voice, that it is spitting out information that I stand behind, right? Because sometimes it might make stuff up or it may give answers that I don't agree with.
Right. It can be incorrect. You need to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah. So if it's getting 80% of the way there, spend the rest of the 20% making sure it's got your touch on it.
I appreciate that so much. So just kind of illustrate two examples of the yes and the no. So let's say I wanted to plan an episode about building a community through your podcast. Okay. So if I went into ChatGPT and I said, ChatGPT, give me the 5 most important areas of conversation for me to focus in on based off of John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneurs on Fire. That's not my original thought, right? If I then take that, I can do all the massaging I want in the world. It's still not my original thought. That's wrong, in my opinion. What would be okay is if I said, because I can imagine my asking somebody on my team, say, hey, look at my old episodes and pull out 5 things you thought were really awesome so I can focus in on this. If I put that task to ChatGPT, for me, that feels totally fine because that's my content. Yeah. And I'm just asking it to do a task for me that's gonna give me kind of just take me to that next step. So I don't have the time. You find 5 things, but it's still my 5 things, right? I think that's the difference.
That is the difference. And, using an example like John Lee Dumas, I think that one thing you can do is you can teach ChatGPT if you say, like the way that he has his show notes formatted for his podcast episodes, you can teach it to learn that formatting style, right? Or you can have it analyze, what is he doing in his show notes? Because we know he's got a very successful show. So maybe you want to learn and understand what he does in his show notes to make them so engaging, right? And then you can adopt that style, right? That format, and then write it in your style, but follow that format, because he teaches how to write show notes. So most likely his show notes are written in the way he'd teach it anyway. So it's just giving you a little jump on it to kind of mimic what some of these successful people are doing without plagiarizing.
To me, that's almost kind of like if ChatGPT was an actual physical human assistant, it's almost like saying, hey, take this course on how to do show notes, and I'm going to ask you to do it and to learn how to do them in this way because that's the standard I want you to use. Similar to, maybe back in the day, taking a course on how to use proper grammar or, when you're writing a paragraph or whatever it is. Like similarly, you learn how to do it in a best practices kind of way, but then you're still the information at the end of the day, the content at the end of the day, the style is you're learning, you're teaching it, you're telling it to go off and learn it. But the content has to be your own. you got to keep your own personality, your own knowledge base, your own humanity in the crux, the core of your podcasting. So just to quickly run through, because, I want to make sure I am aware of your time. Let's just talk about super fast ways that we can use ChatGPT in our podcasting process from the top to the bottom. So for topic ideas, for example, what are some good ways for people to use ChatGPT to generate some topic ideas?
Yeah, great question. I think it really goes back to what we were saying. It's all about the questions that you ask it. So you would probably want to tell it first. What I always like to do is start with the goal. You're going to tell it what you want it to do, the overall objective. Right. So I want you to come up with
like it's a 10-year-old.
5 episode ideas. Yeah, exactly. I want you to come up with 5 episode ideas for my podcast. And then I would take it a step further before hitting submit, and I would tell it things like, this is my target audience. You may want to even tell it, here are some of their challenges that they deal with, or you may just want to leave it at, here's our target audience. This is who I'm speaking to. You might want to tell it, don't give me answers about this, and that, because maybe you've just done those episodes recently. So you want to make sure to filter those out. So you give it the parameters, right? So it's objective. It's then the tasks or the parameters. And what I then like to do is ask it, do you understand? And I might even take that a step further and say, ask me any questions before you perform that objective, right? And then you say, do you understand? And that prompts it to really stop and, for lack of a better term, think about it. And it will ask you questions. If you tell it, ask me any questions that will help you with this task. And it'll ask you those questions before it starts. And then you say, proceed, and it spits things out. If you don't like it, just ask, give me 5 more. Give me 5 more. You keep going until you find some stuff that really excites you and you can dig into. That's the way I would do it for episode ideas.
So I'll just be honest, you asking it the question, do you understand? I'm literally imagining this digital computer going, do I? And that makes me freaked out. That means it's now sentient. It now is self-aware. Just being honest with you. That one made me nervous.
Yeah.
But I totally get it.
Yeah.
And so
it works really well because it does. If it doesn't, because the thing is, if you don't ask and it doesn't understand, it just takes its best guess. Right. So to prompt it, do you understand? It's going to ask you any questions that might help it provide a better answer for you. Yeah.
It might say, I've been looking at these instructions for peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You're asking me to spread it on the thing. I'm supposed to use the hand. Is there a knife? There's something missing in the instructions. Right. I love it. Yeah. Okay. And so we did talk about, of course, how to use it for show notes. You gave a really eloquent example when we were talking about John Lee Dumas there a minute ago. So just one more area. Yeah. In terms of sending emails to potential guests, we talk about you can start have a template. I love me some templates. I'm all about templates, list. That's my jam. So I love a good template for an email, but you still want to make it unique, specific for that person. How does ChatGPT help with that, or how can it?
Well, first of all, I would say, as somebody who loves templates, I would suggest feed it those templates, teach it your templates, your way, the things that you feel are important. Right? That's definitely the first one. The second one, my ADHD just kicked in and I forgot exactly what the question is, where you want me to go with this. Remind me again.
No worries. I'm just wondering, how can people use it to help streamline the process of sending those guest emails when we want to use a template, but we also still want to make each email unique?
So one thing I would also do is prompt it to see if it knows who your guest is. Right? Because you could actually do some research right then and there. And if it knows the guest, you can ask it to provide a lot of information that maybe you didn't know. I like to sometimes do that using Bing, Microsoft's Bing, because they are using ChatGPT in their AI there. And it's also connected to the internet. So it's more likely it's going to get me some more current, up-to-date information about the guest. That's one way I would use it. I would also prepare with suggested questions. I would tell it, give me some questions I could ask this guest once we've established who the guest is and their credentials. Give me some questions I could ask this guest that would be compelling for a podcast. And it'll spit out its suggestions. And then again, if you don't like them, fine tune them, or maybe it's given you enough to come up with some ideas of your own based on some of its suggestions.
I think that's key. Consider the results, the 80-yard line. Right. Keep that. Don't consider the results the 100-yard line. Consider the results the 80-yard line, and just double check, make sure everything's in your how you want it, the kind of questions you would want to ask, layer in more, like just consider it a jumping off point. And then you still have to finish the loop. You still have to be a human and a host and a podcaster and make sure that you are a great content creator. And at the end of the day, are ready for that interview because you've participated in the preparation for it.
Yeah. And, I got one more for you too, by the way,
please.
Jaime. I believe I was talking about writer's block a moment ago. And what I have found lately that's been very helpful for me is if I'm writing a blog or writing show notes, and there's sometimes for me a point where I've written them and then I never feel like I can wrap them up properly. I can never find that effective conclusion. And what I've done lately is when I'm in that spot, I will give it the show notes that I've written so far and basically prompt it to fill in the blank. I might go a little further and I might say, your goal is to write a conclusion to this blog or these show notes. I'll provide you with the blog. You will write that conclusion in 1 to 2 paragraphs. And then maybe I'd provide some additional parameters about the writing style, etc., and have it at least provide a suggested ending for me. And oftentimes I find that it's not perfect, and it's given me something, oh yeah, that's how I could wrap it up. And then it makes life so much easier that way, instead of racking your brain and never really being sure if you're satisfied with your own result. So it's like a collaboration partner at your fingertips.
So I guess, I think I love that. It's a collaboration partner at your fingertips. Think of it as an assistant who's there to help you, not replace you.
Yes.
Your voice is, at the end of the day, what matters. And that starts with your own original thoughts. So Marc, oh my gosh, you are so valued right now and all the time, but right now, the way that you're helping guide this conversation, we're at the infancy of how people are using this. And so right now is where we can influence how people are using this tool. And I want people to use it responsibly, ethically, and with integrity. And so thank you so much for what you're pouring into the community. I want everyone to find, follow, and support you. How can they do that?
They can find me, if it's Instagram, it's at Marc Ronick, and that's MARC, and Ronick ends with CK. And on TikTok, it's Ironic Media, also with that CK. And ultimately, if you just go to ironicmedia.com, you can find access to all the different things, including my new venture, this Next Gen Podcaster, which is a community for podcasters and teaching each other how do we use AI ethically? How do we use it to help us with our processes and procedures to make things easier, to save us time, save us money? So we've created a whole community over there as well, but you can find everything at ironicmedia.com.
That's awesome. And we'll have links in the show notes. And you have no idea how stinking hard it was not to break out into Alanis Morissette during this interview. Marc, thank you so much for being here. It is always fun.
My best friend to this day will randomly sing that song to me when my last name comes up. He'll just impromptu just blurt it out all the time. It's pretty funny.
So that's funny you say that. Every ounce of restraint. Thanks a lot, Marc. I'll see you later.
Isn't it ironic?
Alrighty, thanks again to Marc. That was amazing. Now, let's end with one more of my daily tips. Remember to subscribe to me on all the social media so you get my daily tips and you get them first. And if you want me to talk about anything specific on a tip or on an episode, just email me, Jaime at flintstonemedia.com. That's Jaime at flintstonemedia.com. And I'll be sure to answer you one way or the other. And also, if you are listening to this show and is helping your show grow, then let me know. You can also email me, same thing, and I'll be able to put a link to your show on podcastingyourbrand.com as a thank you. Now, be sure that you're subscribed if you haven't yet, because I have been recording some other awesome conversations with some other pro peers, and I have some solo episodes coming up that are some really, really good stuff too. But my episodes with my pro peers are going to blow your mind. So coming up, we have Sean Savage, who's going to be talking about using music in your podcast. Gordon Farmack, the podcast lawyer himself, is going to be talking about what do you copyright versus what do you trademark. And last but not least is Anna Deshawn, who's going to be talking about crowdfunding for your podcast. All kinds of stuff that you need to know. So subscribe and be sure that you're tuning in every single week to Podcasting Your Brand, because I am bringing you stuff that I just hope helps you become the best podcaster you can be. It is producer Jaime signing off for you now. Remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So now let's get to that final daily tip. Hey, it is producer Jaime here today with your podcasting tip, and I want to let you know that in order to secure a really good sponsorship partner who is going to be willing to put dollars into your hands, you have to be able to prove to them as best as you can that your audience is perfectly matched with their potential customer base. If you're not sure what a Venn diagram is, I want you to pause this here real quick and just Google VENN and look up a Venn diagram. But imagine your circle, one circle is your customer base, and one circle is their audience base. Your audience base for their customer base. I got those backwards, but you follow what I'm saying. As the best that they overlap, those are your best potential sponsors. So the key is to know your audience, whether it's a projection because you're just getting started, or you're able to kind of tell it through stats, through social media engagements, through just the demographics that you're able to glean as best as you can of who your audience is. The best that you can know who your audience is. Like, I know my audience is a whole bunch of people who are entrepreneurs and side hustlers trying to build their brand through the power of podcasting, right? That's my audience. I can pitch that to potential sponsors. So know your audience and come back here every single day. We're going to be focusing on monetization this week. Podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jaime.
Flintstone Media has been building brands through the power of podcasting since 2014, serving as an award-winning and highly resourceful podcast production house and consultancy firm. Work with producer Jaime, a leader in the podcast industry, and add a new podcast to your brand's content offerings. From show development and setup through recording and distribution, producer Jaime and her team will lend their experience launching dozens of successful podcasts and producing thousands of episodes, making creating your show a simple and easy turnkey process for you. Visit flintstonemedia.com for podcast samples. That's flintstonemedia.com.